Hello, everyone, and welcome to Big Sam's Long Balls podcast with me, Dan. Now, today we're going to be talking about my team, Liverpool, and potentially some transfer news at last regarding a midfielder. Now, it looks like Borussia Dortmund are heavily interested in Naby Keita, and this deal looks like it could potentially happen in the next week or so before the deadline ends. Now, if Naby Keita does leave, Jurgen Klopp himself obviously came out, I think about a week or so ago, and said that I think if any Liverpool midfielder, but specifically talking about Naby Keita himself, that if Keita was to leave, then absolutely, I believe was Jurgen Klopp's words, Liverpool would have to go into the transfer market and go and get someone. So potentially some exciting news really for us Liverpool fans, because obviously the midfield is really the area in our team at this current moment in time that needs a lot of refreshing. I kind of went in on Naby Keita yesterday a little bit in my video, and I sort of regret doing that a little bit. I feel quite bad. I think Naby Keita is a fantastic player, and I think some of my frustrations, probably similar to a lot of Liverpool fans' frustrations, is I think he genuinely could potentially be a world-class midfielder. He's got all the talent in the world. He suits his system down to a ground, but he can't stay fit. And when he is fit, a lot of the time it takes him quite a long time to really get up to speed, which is understandable. And then when he's there, he's out injured again for a couple of months. And it's just this constant cycle that has happened for 4 or 5 years now. And I think the reality is he, along with a couple of other players, probably need to be pushed out the door. It's harsh, it's horrible. We don't like to see it. It's perhaps Jurgen Klopp's arguably his biggest weakness that he doesn't do. He's not quite as ruthless as, say, the likes of a Pep Guardiola or an Antonio Conte, but that's where you get left behind in football. You look at someone like Alex Ferguson, for example, one of the greatest managers, arguably the greatest manager of all time. Obviously, that's for another video, that one. But you look at how ruthless he was. You obviously have emotions with these players, of course you do. You've won so much with them, you've coached them for a number of years, but equally they're just a cog on the wheel, and that's a real black and white way of seeing it. But players get older, players lose their form, players get injured, and you have to replace them through. And I was a little bit worried for quite a while, or I still am potentially a little bit worried that perhaps we aren't ruthless enough as a club. Perhaps Klopp isn't ruthless enough. You look at the end of Borussia Dortmund, or Klopp's days at Borussia Dortmund, that 2014-15 season. It was really, really bad, and I think there were similar problems where the um, Dortmund didn't sort of invest. They didn't go and rebuild the team. Now that's for different reasons. I think Borussia Dortmund were financially in a position where they couldn't, whereas I think Liverpool can, and obviously kept losing their best players to Bayern Munich year in year out. So obviously that deflates the manager, that deflates the club. But if you look at that Dortmund team, there was a load of players who are really past their prime. They were brilliant for a number of years under Jurgen Klopp, winning multiple Bundesliga titles, obviously getting to the Champions League final. But when push came to shove, when it needed to be refreshed, uh, they didn't do it. And look, obviously there are obviously different situations at Dortmund, but you can see similar patterns at Liverpool, and it is a bit of a worry. However, I am optimistic at this moment in time that Jurgen Klopp will not repeat that same mistake. That he will have that ruthlessness to go out, move players on, and bring in some fresh blood. Because I think when you look at some of the teams around, and I know it's very early on in the season, I get that. But Arsenal, top of the league, playing probably the best football in the country at the moment. They look a fantastic team. I think they've got the youngest, either the youngest starting 11 in the Premier League or the youngest squad. When Manchester United beat us the other night and should have won by more and really wiped the floor of us in terms of performance, they took out some of the older players. They took out some of the players who potentially were past it, and they brought in some younger players. The left back, for example, Martial coming back into the team. The midfield just had more energy about it. Same with their defense. So you look at some of these trends, and also with Barcelona, Gavi and Pedri coming in. These players who, yeah, they're young, but if they've got that talent and they've got that hunger, I think you need to put them in, and that's why there's a lot of calls for Liverpool fans to see more of Harvey Elliott, to see more of Carvalho, um, and the youngster, the defensive midfielder. I think Bashetic is how I pronounce his name. I don't know if that's actually how you pronounce it or not. So there's a lot of young players at Liverpool that I think us fans want to see, and maybe Klopp is a little bit worried. What does he do? Does he keep playing the old guard? Does he play the youngsters? Anyway, getting a little bit distracted because this video is about transfer news at Liverpool and specifically Naby Keita. So Borussia Dortmund are interested in Naby Keita. David Maddock has reported this, which is a good thing. It's a respectable, genuine journalist, um, a believable link. It's not as if it's come from absolutely nowhere, where you have to really look into how reliable is this. David Maddock is a very reliable source. So Borussia Dortmund are interested. We know that Naby Keita isn't happy at Liverpool Football Club at this moment in time. He's not happy with his game time. He does want to leave. I think it would make perfect sense for Naby Keita as well. You're going back to the Bundesliga. Obviously, he really made his name at Leipzig a number of years ago now. He's probably the best player or the best midfielder in the Bundesliga when he was playing. Him and Thiago were really, neck and neck. They were fantastic. And that's why the excitement was when we got Naby Keita and then we got Thiago. We're going to see them both at their best. But unfortunately, it hasn't happened really because of injuries and just, other situations. So I think it would do Naby Keita the world of good to get out of Liverpool, restart his career really back in the Bundesliga. He knows that league inside and out. And also it means that there is a midfield position up for grabs at Liverpool, and Liverpool will go into the transfer market to go and buy someone. Obviously, Jurgen Klopp has said that if we do sell someone. Now, a little bit of criticism I've read so far this morning that if Naby Keita goes, then we will look to bring in someone. And a few people have sort of said, well, if we do that, we're not really strengthening the midfield. We're just replacing. I disagree with that because I don't feel that Liverpool's midfield is weak in terms of numbers, that we don't have options. We've got a lot of options. I think we've got about 8 midfielders really who can play regularly for Liverpool Football Club. The problem is the majority, or quite a few of them, are injury prone. And the other problem is some of them just simply aren't good enough or need to have a reduced role, i.e. a Jordan Henderson. And I want to talk about the players like Henderson and James Milner, because I don't think that they're rubbish players. I don't think that they are average players. They've been excellent players at Liverpool Football Club, and they will rightly go down as legends here, and they should be respected. However, it is very clear that James Milner and Jordan Henderson, certainly starting together, shouldn't happen, but also the physicality of this league. A couple of years ago, if you needed that strength, you needed that physicality, you go, yeah, James Milner and Jordan Henderson from the start, clattering into opposition players. You knew that was going to happen. Now, not so much. They're getting outrun. They're getting physically bullied in the middle of the park, and that happens. It naturally happens. I think in 12 months' time, I can't see James Milner being here. I imagine he will probably move. I don't think he will retire, but he'll probably move on to another football club. And I think it's important for Jordan Henderson to have those reduced roles. Every single player has a role to play in this Liverpool team, and Jordan Henderson will remain as our captain. He'll be incredibly important, but I think it's important that he doesn't start games. He obviously can start certain games here and there, but the role for Jordan Henderson, especially with the 5-sub rule, becomes so important because he'll be a leader behind the scenes. He'll be so important in the dressing room, and he'll be a player that I would want to see involved in every single game. But as a substitute, if you need bringing on a player with half hour to go, 25, 20 minutes or whatever, you can bring on a Jordan Henderson. If you're 1-0 up, you need someone to come on and keep the ball and sort of keep the tempo going. You set the standards, you bring on a Jordan Henderson. Equally, maybe if you're a goal down, you might bring on a Jordan Henderson just to up the tempo a little bit and just to put a fire or a rocket up the other player's arse. But I think it's important, looking around some of the teams in England at the moment and some of the teams worldwide, those teams who are playing really, really well at the moment, they've got a much younger starting 11 than Liverpool, especially in that midfield. And I think it's so important that we bring in a young, hungrier, fitter lion than the likes of James Milner and Jordan Henderson. Doesn't mean that we have to disregard those players, because their role is still vitally important going forward. There will be huge squad members, and like I just said, we can bring them on in games. But I think it's important to bring in a younger, fresher player. Now, obviously, David Maddock has mentioned the links for Naby Keita to Borussia Dortmund. Now, there are other reports saying that Liverpool aren't going to panic buy. They're going to stick to their guns. And again, that's legitimate journalists like Fabrizio Romano has come out and said that this morning, that Liverpool, they're not going to panic buy. The only way they really go out into the transfer market in the next week or so is if something similar happens, like with Luis Diaz in January, a special case, where they feel like they can go get someone, they don't have to overpay. Okay, we're hearing that a lot. We've also heard, a report, I read it last night, that Liverpool have held a meeting about their transfer plan, and they're going to discuss what they're going to do. Are they going to change their strategy over the next week or so? That looks like a big need to bring someone in. And I personally believe now that Liverpool will bring someone in. We've also seen Paul Joyce, who is Mr. Liverpool on Twitter. If you want something legitimate, you just wait for that Paul Joyce tweet, really. And he's come out and he said that Jurgen Klopp is looking for someone who can play the number 8 role, but also potentially play the number 6 role. Now, Paul Joyce hasn't necessarily come out and said that Liverpool are signing someone in the next week or so. But for him to come out and tweet that rather than staying completely silent, which he usually does, or going that Liverpool aren't searching for someone, it sends a bit of a message, I think, to us that, yeah, Liverpool are actively looking right now. Now, obviously, the obvious link really is Naby Keita going to Borussia Dortmund means that potentially we can soften negotiations up with them, look at doing a swap deal for Jude Bellingham. We know that Liverpool are incredibly eager to bring Jude Bellingham in. He is the one and only midfielder apparently in world football that improves this team. I don't think a swap deal would be likely. I don't think that Borussia Dortmund would be willing to part ways with Jude Bellingham this summer. Certainly with the transfer window closing very, very soon, it just wouldn't make sense. Actually, if you look at Borussia Dortmund's results and their performances, midfield is quite a weak area for them at this current moment in time. Some of the problems that Liverpool have in terms of teams breaking through us, really struggling in transition, teams countering on us, and that midfield just not breaking up play enough. I think Dortmund are struggling in the same areas, and that's where Jude Bellingham is playing. So a part of me thinks, is Jude Bellingham really going to come in and solve all of Liverpool's problems? Personally, I don't think he does. Obviously, I'd love to have him here, but I think he's going to cost, or I've seen a report saying that the Jude Bellingham whole deal could cost 140 million, potentially more than that. And I just don't see Liverpool doing that. We're not that type of club. Real Madrid are hugely interested. Obviously, they've just sold Casemiro to Manchester United. I personally see Jude Bellingham in a Real Madrid shirt next summer. I'd hate to see it. Obviously, I'd love to see him at Anfield, but I don't think I don't think that's the type of signing for Liverpool. He's a Galactico signing now, and I think he's made for Real Madrid. Maybe in 2-3 years' time, if he flops at Real Madrid, we might be able to sign him for 45 million. maybe that's what we'll do. But I personally think that Jude Bellingham to Liverpool is highly unlikely. I'm not a journalist. I don't have any inside sources, obviously, but that's just my opinion. But what I would love to see, and looking at the Paul Joyce tweet of we're looking for someone who can play the number 8, but also the number 6. I don't think Jude Bellingham is that type of player. I think you want to get him in that number 8 and further up the pitch to really get him at his best. I don't see him as someone being defensively particularly strong. My dream signing, and again, I haven't seen like a real serious link to this player. We've seen like the odds, rumors, but I don't think anyone that you would say is a reliable journalist has come out and said it. But Moises Caicedo from Brighton, he's only 20 years of age. He would probably cost a lot. I think Brighton have reported that they would want 40-45 million pounds for him. I think they'd probably want more than that after having lost Basuma earlier on this summer. And we're so late on in the transfer window, that fee could easily go up to 60 odd million. However, I do think it would be worth it. I know he hasn't played in the Premier League for that long. We've only seen sort of handful bits from him, but he's that player. You know, when you watch a player, and I haven't got the stats of Caicedo in front of me, but when you watch a player, once or a couple of times, and you go, yeah, he is the one. And I would rather go out and get Moises Caicedo than Jude Bellingham. Maybe that's controversial. You might disagree with that. That's absolutely fine. Let me know in the comments down below who you would love to see Liverpool go and sign. But for me, I think Caicedo solves so many problems. And suddenly I look at this Liverpool team in a completely different light. And when you get everyone fit, you could go, right, well, we've got Alisson, we've got the back four. I think you probably bring in Konate when everyone's fit. You go Fabinho in the number 6. I would have Caicedo on that right-hand side, just in front of Fabinho. And I think suddenly Fabinho's performances go up with a Moises Caicedo there. He's physically strong. He's, athletic as hell. I think he does he can do the Genie Wijnaldum role down to a T. And I think he's got more to his game than a Wijnaldum as well. And I think one of the reasons why Fabinho looks so poor at this moment in time is the midfield is chaotic, as we've all seen. But players seem to be going all over the place. And I don't have a board in front of me, which is really annoying because I'd love to sort of do like a couple of tactics. Obviously, from what I've I've noticed in games. But the midfielders, say you've got like Fabinho down here, the others just seem to be sort of going all over the place. And suddenly Fabinho has got this whole area of the pitch to cover by himself. And that's why he looks quite poor, because we know that Fabinho isn't necessarily the most athletic midfielder in world football. We know that he's not the quickest, but what he is he's a destroyer. He breaks up play. He's fantastic in 1v1 tackles. But because the midfielders are all separating at the moment and leaving Fabinho so exposed, he's having to go out wide like he did. Well, obviously he didn't play very long against Manchester United, but the game against Crystal Palace, he was having to drop out wide with players like Eze or Elise were sort of getting 1v1 against him and were knocking the ball past him easily because they're so much quicker and out wide. It's like when you don't want a centre back going out wide. You want Fabinho in the middle of the pitch, and you don't want him being drawn out. So he gets beaten too easily, and suddenly he looks bang average. And we know that he's not average. It's just that the midfielders around him aren't supporting him, and therefore Trent Alexander-Arnold as well is getting exposed. We know that Trent isn't the best defender in world football, and he needs to up his game massively. But equally, I do feel for him at times because the protection in front of him is non-existent. You've got Salah on that right-hand side who isn't going to track back loads and protect him, and you've got Harvey Elliott in front of him as well, who's not a defensive-minded midfielder. So the tactics for me at this moment in time just seem very, very strange. But I think if you chuck a Moises Caicedo in there in front of Fabinho, it protects Fabinho. It gives him more support in that midfield, more energy. And suddenly Fabinho, I think, would go back to his best. And also, Moises Caicedo would then offer naturally that more protection for Trent Alexander-Arnold. He would track back. He would help him out. I think he would slot into that position, allowing Trent to bomb forward a lot more. And suddenly we won't see Trent. Obviously, we will see Trent exposed from time to time because he's not the best defender in world football, and players can get exposed. Of course they can. But I think suddenly, tactically, he has that much more protection. I think what you could then do is then have a player like Harvey Elliott and put him over to that left-hand side of a midfield three. I know some people go near, but we want him on that right-hand side. I think, too much is made of that. I think players can, when they're a central midfielder, it doesn't matter too much if they go on the left or on the right. I think players are flexible and adaptable. And at times, I do feel that maybe we are over the top at times in this fan base, maybe in every fan base, and go, no, he's a right-sided centre midfielder. He can't play on the left. I think that's kind of nonsense. And I think sort of players should be able to do a little bit more from time to time. So Harvey Elliott on that left-hand side, it would be on his stronger side. This obsession with constantly cutting inside as well, where you've got left-footed players on that right-hand side and right-footed players on the left-hand side, at times it makes it too easy, too obvious, because you know what this player is going to do. You look at Manchester City, for example. I know Phil Foden isn't in the best form in the world at this moment in time, but when he plays on that left wing, or he can play in a midfield three, I think he's better on that left-hand side than he is on the right. And he's not cutting in and shooting, but he gets 1v1 with a defender, and he knocks it past him. Suddenly he can put it back on the byline, and it causes chaos. That's what Liverpool need to do a little bit more, I think. We're constantly trying to cut inside and shoot, and it's too cramped. And actually having a winger, a right-footed winger on that right-hand side, or a left-footed winger on that hand side, they beat the full-back, they pull it back, suddenly chaos ensues. So I think you could put Harvey Elliott on the left of a midfield three with Caicedo, and suddenly that midfield three looks a lot stronger. Obviously, once Thiago comes back, Thiago will come in, and he naturally plays on the left-hand side anyway. And I think it's good for both of those players then, because I'm talking about Elliott and Thiago here, because then Thiago's not playing week in, week out. He's a luxury player, so when he's fit, you put him in and you play. But equally, it's good for Harvey Elliott's development to not actually play week in, week out. I know that sounds a bit counterintuitive, but he's only 19. He's still physically growing. He's still learning his trade. I don't think it does the world of good for a 19-year-old to play in a Premier League team, to a team that's got aspirations of winning the title. I don't think we're going to win the title. This season has been a horrendous start, but I don't think it does them the world of good to play week in, week out physically. I think you could have Harvey Elliott play a couple of games, then he comes out, Thiago plays a couple of games, then he comes out, and they swap and they rotate. And actually, I think it does the world of good for Harvey Elliott's development. And I think it does the world of good then for Thiago's physicality, that he's not having to play 90 minutes week in, week out, and he's got someone who can come in and rotate. I think that midfield suddenly has more balance. Fabinho's got more protection. And talking about that, I know a lot of Liverpool fans might say, well, yeah, Caicedo's a good player, but we want someone who's going to score goals, get assists in midfield. Of course we want that. Absolutely, we want that, but I don't think that's a necessity right now. When you look at the game so far, Liverpool aren't doing the basics, and those basics are in midfield where we're not able to break up play. Liverpool under Jurgen Klopp, they don't necessarily play with a number 10. So obviously it'd be great to have a goal scoring midfielder, but I don't think that's the case because the Gergen press is the number 10 for Jurgen Klopp. If we can press the ball high up the pitch, the counter pressing, and then suddenly high turnovers, suddenly you've got 3 or 4 options to pass the ball, and that is better than an out and out attacking or goal scoring midfielder in the eyes of Jurgen Klopp, and it has done wonders at Liverpool. So yeah, I'd love a goal scoring midfielder. Of course, I would. I'd love a Jude Bellingham. I'd love a Kevin De Bruyne, a Bernardo Silva, a Gundogan at Chelsea, Chelsea at City, but that's not necessarily the way that we play. And actually, I think Caicedo, Fabinho, and either Thiago or Harvey Elliott in that midfield, suddenly look, the balance there is perfect. You've got the number 6 in Fabinho, the destroyer. He breaks up play. You've got Caicedo, who's box to box. He's so much energy, can win the ball high up the pitch. He can also offer so much protection for Fabinho and for our defenders, and most importantly for Trent. And then you've got the creativity of a Harvey Elliott or a Thiago who can just float around the pitch, finding those pockets of space. So I look at that and I go, yeah, that's a midfield for me. That's a midfield 3 that can go on and really challenge and sort of win things. You've got to get the balance right. And I don't think we've had the balance since Wijnaldum has left. I know that Thiago is a better player than Wijnaldum in terms of being on the ball and what he can do. But that balance that Wijnaldum gave, I think we've lost that since Thiago's come in. It's not Thiago's fault. Of course it isn't. But I think a Caicedo comes in, suddenly that balance is there. In my opinion, you might obviously disagree. I'd also like to see a little bit more sort of flexibility from Liverpool, in attack. At this moment in time, obviously Nunes is suspended, Jota's out injured. We're talking about this idea of maybe taking Firmino out, putting Carvalho as a false 9. I personally wouldn't want to see that. I don't think it would work, but we could play Mo Salah through the middle, and we could do that at times this season. And maybe that might not work, but it would be interesting to see him through the middle as a striker. I think he will cause defenders problems. He is obviously our best finisher. I think what you could do is you could put a Jota on the left when he's fit at times. You could even put a Nunes on the left because that's where he played a lot of the time for Benfica. It doesn't have to be a set position for 90 minutes. You can rotate, obviously, but you could, for the moment while these guys are out injured, you could put Salah through the middle. And I would take Diaz out actually from the left-hand side, and I put Carvalho on that left-hand side. What he did at the end of that game against Manchester United really impressed me, and he's floating around that area of the pitch. He looks a real gem, that guy, and I would have him on that left-hand side and potentially put Diaz over to the right for a little while. Again, it offers that little bit more protection for Trent Alexander-Arnold. He's going to track back and support Trent out more. But again, it's that idea that we've got a winger on the right-hand side who's right-footed. He's going to beat the fullback because I think Diaz 1v1 against most fullbacks, he wins a lot of the time, and he gets that byline and he cuts it back to someone like a Salah, like a Carvalho or an Elliott, and suddenly you've got that flexibility. You don't have to stick rigidly, which I think is what we've done so far at the start of the season. I've noticed that Diaz and Salah are playing so wide, and it doesn't seem to suit, especially Salah, it doesn't seem to suit his game. But either way, we've got so many exciting options. I want to see more of Carvalho on that left-hand side, floating in and out. I think you could put Diaz anywhere across that front 3. He's brilliant. And Salah through the middle could be an exciting option until obviously we get Jota and Nunes back regularly. But yeah, for me, Moises Caicedo is the player that he would be my dream signing. I think he just makes this midfield so much better. And obviously anyone who's been coached by Graham Potter in that Brighton team, I think would be worth a punt on, because he's one of the best managers and coaches in the game at this current moment in time, in my opinion. Again, you might disagree with that. So yeah, that is the news today. It looks like Naby Keita could well be on his way out, could be on his way back to the Bundesliga with Borussia Dortmund. If that happens, the likelihood is much higher that Liverpool go out and sign a centre midfielder. Obviously, the dream for a lot of people is Jude Bellingham. Obviously, if Naby Keita goes to Dortmund, people will be thinking, can we do a swap deal? However, for me, I think Moises Caicedo would be the man to come in at Liverpool. 20 years of age, I think he would suit on that right hand side or that left hand side. I personally think that right hand side is screaming out for someone So he could come in and suddenly that balance is there. I think he offers more protection for the back four, more protection for Trent. He helps out Fabinho more. He's going to get up and down the pitch more than the likes of Milner and Henderson and win that ball high up the pitch. Again, that's not a criticism of Milner and Henderson. I think it's just natural that we need someone to come in a younger age and give these guys a reduced role, because it's not fair on them, quite frankly, to be starting week in, week out at this point in their careers. They need to have a reduced workload. So Moises Caicedo, for me, I would love to see him at Liverpool. Even if Liverpool spend 55 million on him, I think it would be worth it. So anyway, guys, that is the news today. It looks like Naby Keita could well be on his way out. Liverpool likely then could be bringing in another midfielder. Let me know in the comments down below who you want Liverpool to go out and sign. So I hope you enjoyed the video, guys. If you did, leave us a like, subscribe. It would be great to see a few more subscriptions to this channel. We're getting a little bit more activity on this channel, which is great. More subscribers, more comments, more likes, and it's really, really good. And I want to hear more from you guys. Equally, if you are interested in doing a podcast with me or with Chris, just let me know in the comments. From any fan base, wherever, we want to hear your voices. This is a channel for all football fans. So let me know if you want to get involved in the podcast and we'll make it happen. So I hope you enjoyed the video, guys. If you did, give us a like, and I'll see you very, very soon. So thank you so much for watching.